You don't actually have trust issues. You have self-betrayal wounds. And those wounds weren't your fault. They were given to you strategically, repeatedly, so someone else could stay in control. Let that sink in. If you've ever felt like you can't trust yourself to make the right decision, to choose the right person, to walk away when something feels wrong, to stand on what you know deep down is true, I need you to hear this. It's not because something's wrong with you. It's because you survived a relationship that required you to silence your inner voice just to stay afloat. And now you're left with the aftershocks, the hesitation, the doubt, the disconnect from your own inner compass. I'm Coach Nia Renee, a certified narcissistic abuse relationship recovery coach. And today we're diving into one of the most silent but most powerful effects of narcissistic abuse, the breakdown of self-trust. Let's talk about what really happened, and more importantly, how to start healing. Let's rewind back to the beginning, before the trauma had a name, before you knew what gaslighting even was, before you could articulate what your body already understood. When you were in the relationship, you knew. Maybe not consciously, maybe not in words, but your gut whispered, your body flinched, your energy shifted. You noticed how your shoulders tensed when they walked into the room. You noticed how your heart beat faster, not with excitement, but with dread. You noticed how peaceful moments were followed by chaos, like a pattern you couldn't prove but couldn't unsee either. There was a constant hum in the background of your nervous system. Something's not right. But still, you stayed. Not because you were naive, not because you didn't value yourself, and definitely not because you loved the drama. That lie can go straight to hell. You stayed because every time you questioned the behavior, you were made to feel like you were the problem. It's not that deep. You always blow things out of proportion. You're crazy, you're insecure, you're impossible to please. I never said that. You misunderstood me. You're so emotional and on your period or something. Every time you tried to make sense of the chaos, they handed you confusion. They dismissed your feelings so casually, so repeatedly, that eventually you started dismissing them too. And that gut feeling, the one that once screamed to protect you, started whispering so quietly you almost couldn't hear it anymore. Because their voice got louder. Their narratives, their moods, their emotional weather patterns that you were always trying to track so you could avoid the next explosion. And that's when it happened. You stopped trusting yourself. You started outsourcing your reality to someone who manipulated it. You second-guessed your reactions, your perceptions, your truth, because trusting yourself had been punished over and over again. And here's the part most people don't understand. That weakness, that wasn't codependency. That wasn't low self-worth. That was survival. When you're in a relationship that punishes truth and rewards silence, you do what you have to do to emotionally survive. You stop questioning them because it's safer to question you. You stop setting boundaries because they were never respected anyway. You learn to make peace with discomfort and call it love. And when you live in chaos long enough, you start to believe that the absence of conflict, even if it's empty or cold, it's peace. But that's not peace. That's just quiet pain. And that confusion, that learned mistrust of yourself, that's the root of why trusting yourself after the narcissist feels impossible. Because when someone teaches you to doubt yourself in order to love them, you're left rebuilding not just your heart, but your entire sense of reality. Even after the relationship ends, the damage doesn't magically disappear. The breakup may be final, the phone calls may have stopped, the door may be closed, but the imprint they left on your nervous system, on your identity, on your voice is still very much alive. Because even when the narcissist is gone, their voice lives rent-free in your head. You can still hear it when you mess up. You hear it when you speak up. You hear it when you dare to want more. It's the voice that says, you're being too emotional. You're never satisfied. You're lucky someone like me even stayed with you. And the sick part is, they're not even saying it anymore. Now you are. That's the kind of power manipulation has. It doesn't just control you in the moment, it rewires the way you see yourself. So now, even though the relationship is over, you're left standing in the emotional rubble, holding fragments of a version of you that you don't even recognize. You look in the mirror and think, where did I go? When did I stop trusting myself? Why do I feel so disconnected from who I used to be? You try to move on, you try to date again, you try to make simple decisions, what to wear, who to trust, what to believe about yourself, and still something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but it feels like your inner compass is broken. You reach for clarity, but all you get is confusion. You try to rely on your gut, but you can't tell if it's warning you or just reliving the past. The part of you that used to just know doesn't know anymore. It doesn't point north. It doesn't point anywhere. It just spins. And that spinning, that disorientation, that's what self-betrayal feels like. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's subtle. It creeps in during the most ordinary moments. When you second guess what you said, when you apologize for things that weren't your fault, when you feel your body reacting to something small and you ignore it. When you feel the red flags and convince yourself it's just leftover trauma instead of trusting the warning. And it's exhausting because deep down, you want to trust yourself. You want to feel empowered again. You want to move through life with clarity, not fear. But the voice that once guided you has been drowned out by years of gaslighting, guilt tripping, and emotional manipulation. That's the damage they don't talk about enough. It's not just about what happened while you were with them. It's about the mess they left inside you when they walked away. But let me be clear. Your compass is not broken beyond repair. It's disoriented. It's confused, but it still exists. You just have to rebuild your relationship with it. And that rebuilding starts with acknowledging how deeply they disrupted your connection to yourself. Because once you name it, you begin to reclaim it. Here's how it shows up after narcissistic abuse. You second guess everything from what you said in a text to how you interpreted a look to whether or not you're allowed to feel what you're feeling. You replay conversations, obsessing over every word, wondering, was I the one who caused it? Was I the toxic one? You ignore your gut because you've been trained to believe it's too loud, too much, too irrational. So instead you silence yourself first, just in case. You see red flags, you feel them, you know them, but you stay. Not because you want to, but because the thought of leaving, the fear of being alone, starting over, facing that silence again, it's paralyzing. And that's when the shame creeps in. Why can't I trust myself more? Why do I keep picking the wrong people? What's wrong with me that I can't get this right? But let me stop you there. This isn't about failure. This is about conditioning. You were taught slowly over time to disconnect from your own truth in order to maintain the relationship. At first, it was subtle, dismissed feelings, twisted arguments, guilt trips, but eventually it became routine. You didn't lose trust in them. You lost trust in you. You learned to abandon yourself before someone else could. You learned to say it's fine when it wasn't. You learned that protecting that relationship meant betraying yourself over and over again. And when you do that long enough, you stop recognizing the difference between self-compromise and self-erasure. That's not just self-doubt, that's learned self-abandonment. A survival strategy turned coping mechanism turned emotional reflex. And the cruelest part, now that the relationship is over, you're the one holding the shame that never belonged to you in the first place. But here's the truth. You didn't fail, you adapted. You became who you needed to be to survive that environment. And now you're doing the courageous work of unlearning it all. You're peeling back the layers of falsehood, reclaiming your voice, learning to hear your own truth again. That's not just healing, that's transformation. So if it feels hard, it's because it is. But it's also worth every single step because you are worth coming home to. Let me tell you something vulnerable. There was a time in my life when I couldn't even order food off a menu without spiraling. I'd open it, stare at the options, and freeze. Not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because I didn't trust that I was allowed to want anything at all. I would panic over the smallest decisions, what to wear, what to eat, what to say, because in my past relationship, every choice came with a consequence. If I chose wrong, there was punishment. Sometimes subtle, sometimes sharp, always heavy. Maybe it was a sigh, maybe it was a passive-aggressive comment about my weight, maybe it was silence, the kind that lasted hours, or a full-on lecture about how I was wasting money or embarrassing him or never thinking things through. And eventually that conditioning sank into my bones, so I shrank. I stopped choosing altogether because it was safer not to choose at all than to risk making a decision that would be used against me. That's what emotional abuse does. It teaches you that your voice is dangerous. It trains you to believe that your instincts can't be trusted, that your preference are problems, that your no doesn't count, that your yes better be perfectly aligned with their expectations or else. And so you stop trusting yourself in everything. That's why what my client said hit me so hard. We were talking about their dating life after leaving their narcissistic ex, and they said, I feel like my picker is broken. Like if I trust myself again, I'll ruin everything. That broke my heart because what they were really saying was, I still think it was my fault that I got hurt. And maybe you felt that way too. Maybe part of you still believes you should have known better, that should have left sooner, that should have seen the signs, that if you had been just a little stronger, smarter, or more self-aware, you wouldn't have ended up so broken. So let me speak directly to that belief. It was not your fault. You weren't too trusting, you were misled. You weren't too emotional, you were gaslit. You weren't weak, you were surviving a relationship that was intentionally designed to keep you off balance. You did not deserve the pain you were handed, and your softness was never the problem. It was their manipulation. The version of you who stayed, they weren't naive. They were resourceful. They were trying to make sense of the chaos with the tools they had. They loved deeply. They wanted to believe the best in someone. They hoped. They gave grace. They tried over and over again. And now, you're not betraying them by healing. You're honoring them. You're saying you deserved better, and I'm going to be the one who gives that to you now. That's not weakness. That's not foolishness. That's power. The power to rewrite the story. The power to reclaim your voice. The power to trust yourself again, even when it shakes. And that journey, that choice to come back to yourself piece by piece, moment by moment, that is the most radical kind of healing there is. So let's talk about the rebuild, because this is where your story shifts. You don't need to become someone new. You just need to reconnect with the version of you that was always there before the noise, before the doubt, before the damage. And here's how we begin. Validate your past self. Stop shaming the version of you that stayed. Start thanking them. They kept you alive. They did their best. They got you here. Now it's your job to guide them to safety. Practice small trust exercises daily. Ask yourself, what do I want right now? Honor that answer, even if it's something small. What do you want to wear, eat, say no to? You rebuild trust in the little choices before the big ones. Repeat this mantra. I get to change my mind. Self-trust doesn't mean being right all the time. It means knowing that even if you pivot, you'll still have your own back. Create safety within. You don't need someone else to validate your feelings to make them feel real. You don't need permission to rest. You don't need approval to choose peace. You are your safe place now. And that is how the healing begins. If this video spoke to something deep inside you, and if you're tired of doubting every move, of second guessing every instinct, of living in the shadows of your past pain, then I invite you to take the next step with me. I've built a full coaching program that walks you through exactly how to rebuild your self-trust step by step with support, tools, and truth. Check the description to book a free clarity call with me. Let's talk about your story. Let's make a plan. Let's bring you back home to yourself. Because your intuition never left you. It's just been waiting for you to hear it again. You can trust yourself, and that healing, it starts right now. Thank you for tuning into my channel, and I hope to see you on the next video. And I just want to remind you, drink some water, get some rest, and don't let nobody's dusty ass child treat you any kind of way. I love you, battered hearts.